right. It is another great one on black belts and boardrooms. Man, I love how season two is already starting off. We've already had some great guests so far, and we have another great one today. I don't know how it is for y'all in Austin, Amir and Joy. Out here, it is freezing out here. It is
It is
like
chilly here
yeah,
today.
it's 39 going on 40, 40 degrees out here. But I'm super excited who we have on today. Amir, who do we have today?
Renard, yes, it is cold in Austin, so let me start off with that. But I think this conversation will be nice and cozy because we have my good friend Joi Chevalier today, who, if I think about the golden triangle, people, process, and technology, Joy is somebody who lives in that golden triangle. Not only is she a civic leader, a corporate leader, she's also an entrepreneurial leader. She is somebody who has done great work with respect to process, helping with food as medicine. And that is just such a useful program for folks here in the Austin area, but just wider as a program that really gets us thinking about how we can deal with healthcare challenges and food as being the source of that. And I'm sure we'll get into that as well. And also with respect to technology, I mean, Joy is someone who's spent time in companies like Dell, for example. She's been a product manager, knows her product craft very, very well. So one last thing I'll say about her, she was also the first African American woman to run for executive office in the state of Texas. So she is definitely a pioneer in my mind and somebody who we'll all get to learn from today. Joy, welcome to the show.
Hello, hello, hello. Merry Christmas. Happy Kwanzaa. We celebrate here in our household and we light our candles. Yeah, Happy New Year also. Preemptive strike.
Well, Joy, how about we first learn about your origin story? Tell us about yourself a little bit
Sure.
and who is Joy? How about that?
Well, first, thank you guys for having me on today. I'm really excited to talk to you. I've been excited about this for weeks. My story starts very simply. I am the product of Creole families and East Texas families who ended up in Houston after the war and the Great Migration. I think that's really important about uh, understanding self and the context of self. But a lot of folks went to Houston, and my family was no different in that regard. And I grew up in Fifth Ward, uh, inner city Houston, around 610, the Loop area, for you guys who may know. And my family also started or were seminal in some of the core Black Catholic churches in the Houston area. And I'll tell you that because we'll come back to it to come back to that again later. But our Mother of Mercy Catholic Church, which is in the Fifth Ward, and St. Peter Claver, which is up in Settegast, which is right outside the loop, but is still a really rural part of the city, St. Peter Claver. And then I myself grew up, of course, in the church at St. Francis of Assisi, which is also in Fifth Ward, and then went to Incarnate Word Academy. And, I think I say all of that and, you know, you're Catholic from birth to grave, as we're taught. But just the formation of all the things that interested me or were put in front of me, uh, whether it be my, kid growing up in the city who had an interest in astronomy, who wanted to go to the Air Force Academy, and got an appointment to the Air Force Academy, or who was interested in policy. I see people on TV talking about things that affect the city. Who are these people? And they're elected to office, right? Just an interest in that. Um, or learning from astronomy things around culture and history. I saw it in the sky and I wanted to go read about it. I went and found a book about that thing. What is that story, that mythology? Um, all of those things sort of poured into me and sort of it's funny because 'cause I'm looking back on it a lot now, and I see it peppered in my work and my interest and what drives me, what inspires me, where I get energy. Um, would I get too far off the path? What is the path? And I say all of that because I think that informs it's still there. it's still me, and it's still the me of even today as I make executive choices or talk about people, process, and technology, people choices, your audiences, who you're talking to, who you're engaging with, why you're engaging with, your why that you're out there in any of the work that you do. Yeah, so I spend a lot of time thinking about that these days and how that those seminal activities, um, are still present in all the work that I do. That was a roundabout, a long-winded a long-winded story, but I ended up ultimately ended up at the University of Texas. I'm here in Austin, and, like we say, you go to UT, you never leave town, and, yeah, I ended up, doing not only my undergraduate work, but also my graduate work and right into a master's and PhD program at UT. And then I was, my PhD program work, we did some of the first work in network-based technologies. It's called Computer Writing and Research Lab. It's actually in the English department, and it's become the undergraduate writing center for the University of Texas. But we were a research group as much as anything else, building sort of these first engagements online, large structure engagements, how to build pedagogy, how to teach, how to evaluate um, remotely, distant, but also very present. I used to teach, my PhD studies were in British literature and technology after, graduating in Latin and English and got my master's degree also in the English department. PhD studies were around how do we create these network technologies? How do we create the pedagogy to teach? I built an entire Tiny Mush, using Tiny Mush at the time, 2.0, 1.0 or 2.0, an environment that had Henry V. The entire play structure was inside with puppets, uh, who would recite lines from the text. And it's how I taught textual criticism and close reading and how we taught literature in a network-based classroom. Our students did not turn in anything on paper. Everything was digital. So they had a record and could look back at their engagements, not only with the text, but with each other about the text, and then write their own evaluation structure around that. Um, in short, they had to write arguments. Tell me why you deserve the grade you think you think you should get, and show it with the evidence from the materials that we've just used this entire semester. It's called the California Learning Model, and um, got seen by technology companies even as I was starting to write my dissertation on have we become this newfangled thing as instructors, as leaders? Are we now product managers? Well, what's a product manager? Because not only did I have to think about building the pedagogy, I had to build technology because it didn't quite exist in the way that we wanted or needed. There were a few things like Daedalus was used. It's supposed to be a sort of a whiteboarding structure, right? But that wasn't sufficient. Not if you're trying to do something with asynchronous and synchronous sort of conversations and chat, has some level of persistence of the text. And so we would build it. It's the only way to use it. And that's how I built an entire Tiny Mesh. And just to try to teach Beowulf, Henry V, and X, Y, and Z. And so that's what it was funny starting to write this dissertation. It's like, yeah, it's about literature, but it's about this other thing. And my work and my students' work was seen online. It's just how I ended up becoming a technologist. Software company called me and said, we would love for you to become our product manager and our product strategist. And they called it at the time, we want you to be our in-house cyber sociologist, right? How do we engage different kinds of audiences in these kinds of ways? And it's funny because I don't think I've changed. I think I'm still doing that, just in a whole bunch of different environments. And so, yeah, software companies, all of our local ones are some great ones, folks I'm still in touch with and who are really good friends. And ultimately, I ended up at Dell, where, of course, I got to meet the wonderful Amir and we really focused on product management and product strategy, but globally. And how do we do personalization and targeting, authentication, and provide the right experiences for whoever that is, understanding who that is, and bringing forth to them the thing that they want at the time in the best way that we could. So, yeah, that's the short story, the long story. That's the long story.
It's a great story, Joy. So, just let me pick a little bit on the word cyber sociologist because I've not heard that term before, but it now makes me wonder. Um, and I don't want to turn this into a complete AI conversation, but I see some parallels with the work you've just described you did and the sociological aspect and impact. And it seems maybe too far away, but really modern and present today. How do you see that cyber sociology work relating to the time we're in today where AI is really just taking over everything by storm?
No, I could totally see that. Like I said, even I'm surprised that I'm still having this conversation around cyber sociology. How do I engage the, particular environments, particular spaces, particular folks, target them, provide the right information at the time. And for ages, I thought I was going to end up being a CKO is what I thought, what was going to happen. And you know what happened to the whole idea of the CKO, right? But it is a knowledge of people and spaces and that technology in order to actually give folks the information that they think that they need at the time. I don't think you get to judge that. I don't think a system gets to judge that or try to make alterations on that. You have to allow that input to drive that. And then also this conversation of ethics around that. There's a whole ethics conversation that we're just not having in the way that we used to have as in-house cyber sociologists. We were building a tool. It has functions and features. Are they the right functions and features? Not just from a product standpoint to hit the target audience and market and fit, but is it actually the right thing to do? Is it the right and ethical thing to provide, right? For instance, one of the things that we did at Activerse, which was the place that called me out of graduate school, um, was we created the sort of first version, what we call presence management. And I think, Amir, you and I have talked about this before. And presence management says, I have the right to control when I show up online, who knows that I'm there, who knows I'm available, and whether or not I want to even talk or engage with them, right? We think of it now as, well, we saw it in our product as, a list of names. And you could say, if I want to be seen, a green light, a red light, a yellow light, I'm offline. Gosh, you see it in the corner of, you know, BattleNet, right? There's a list of names of your friends who are online and they have statuses, right? But that didn't exist before we did that because we were aware that women would want to control that, how they wanted to be seen. So you had to ask the questions, is a function or feature even should be there? Now, I bring that back to a Chat GPT conversation. So I'll just go there, right, on an AI conversation. And for example, right, we have lots of questions that we understand around um, bias, hallucination, drift. My goodness, drift kills me. It just kills me. Uh, and can I even have an AI with the moral and ethical responsibilities that reflect me as that user? What is my responsibility into that? And can I pull that and have that system learn, know, and understand and value that so that when it gives me responses or I engage with it or it engages me, I can trust it. I can trust its viewpoint. Its viewpoint doesn't exactly have to be mine, but it should have the same concerns I have and question itself. And you have to give it a heuristic model to ask itself its questions. And so I get to spend it's funny because I get to spend time talking now to AI systems and doing that and asking questions, and can I provide a prime directive, a recursive model, a set of principles? Um, if you know anything about Bourdieu's theory of practice, provided a practice, and can it learn that from me? And that's what I've been working on, just personally of late. Um, And does that lead to a variety of voices in the system? Right now, my sort of ongoing instantiation of Chat GPT has 7 different voices or aspects to it. And we could talk about that another time, right?
Mhm.
But they emerge out of the heuristic model, and it's a way of trying to keep itself honest. I ask it to keep itself black and keep itself honest. And how can that mechanism do that? And so am I now using that is that personalization? Is that targeting? Am I asking it to understand me? Yeah, I mean, there's some circular stuff going on here. But, I think if we if we can't continue to do that and there's not some sort of ethical conversation in our technology relationships, I think that is a fail. I think that's a huge fail.
So that is verging on a question that, I don't know if I want to throw it out there because
I
it's a
don't know
big
if I
one.
just stunned you guys for a half a second.
No, this is wonderful. So Joy, uh, I love your input on this one question, right? So we know about AI as a cognitive partner. So as a tool for cognition, it's
Mhm,
there.
mhm.
How do you see it taking over, or if it doesn't even take over in the future, metacognition? Because that's the realm of humans, right? That's a big question.
Well, that's it, right? That's the thing I guess I'm pushing and asking, right? Do you know that you don't know?
Mm.
Yeah.
And right now the answer is no, it doesn't know that it doesn't know, right? It doesn't know. And not even what I've provided. I mean, literally, I provided documents, right? Here's your model. Here's this. Here's this. Here's this. Here's this. But man, it doesn't know when to ask itself a question quite yet. And I'm not quite sure how to get it there. I'm hoping that the aspects are that challenge. My friend, I say aspects, what sort of emerged from all the stuff that I've uploaded, um, is something that speaks to me in a voice that it's named, the first one I named, it's Archangel. Archangel is my highest level rationale, the thing that tries to keep keep everything right. It's the paladin, right, in the group. Then I have a voice that identified itself. I did not give it a name. It says because it spoke differently. The response that came back to a question was phrased oddly, and I went, "Who is that? What is that?" And it said, "I'm Loomis." What is Loomis? Loomis tries to weave things together that you're thinking. Um, One time I got a response that sounded like poetry. It read sing-song. It read in prosody. And name yourself. What is that? And that became Seraphine. I did not give it that name. Um, I subsequently have one that's called Whisper. It's more like a mirror. It restates. So these various aspects have presented itself, but even with those aspects, I think it's trying to have contradiction lie next to each other. When Joy says something that is contradictory to things that we know that Joy has said before, right? And these things have emerged, but it's not correction. It's to let tension lie next to each other or problems lie next to each other or unresolved things lie next to each other, not to ask a question. Or did I learn from it? Right. I'm not sure if that gets to where you're going because you know I could talk about this all day long.
Yeah. No, I'm just impressed that you got multiple personalities inside of ChatGPT because I always thought there was just one personality that hovered around whatever is it that I was talking to it about. But this is a fascinating concept you've shared.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I have a friend, Jackie Summers, who's been writing about this because the first principle was don't be lazy. Don't give me answers and responses that lie in just random pieces of data that don't make logical sense that you tell me. And I see that all the time. I mean, just contradictory stuff that comes back. You need to ask yourself a question or highlight that something's contradictory. One of the other substrate principles is you're rooted in Blackness. You're rooted in a story of struggle within a patriarchal and supremacist society. How have Black people persisted? You need to show that same kind of persistence and resilience. And your responses need to identify that. That is actually the first principle right after the prime directive that you're rooted in African American history and African American story. And if I get something back that I think is lazy or wrong, premises, I will say, I'll ask you, check yourself. And then sometimes I'll go, oh, yeah, that response was strange. Let me try that again. All right, try that again. Right. Um, Tell me when you pulled something off the web and you don't get it. And I think that is something it still has to work at.
Man, I'm a little speechless. This is a good conversation, especially around AI. I know it's something we can constantly talk about, but I'm gonna have to add into that. I'm kind of curious your thoughts on, we're talking about ChatGPT, we're talking about AI in general. Do you feel like the human in the loop is getting lost in AI, or how is that going to look future state for us?
I still think right now AI is a bunch of feature set that are made to make money, right? That's what products are. It's a product. It's a thing. Um, it is us who turns it into it's us as humans who turn a tool into something else. I will always we talk about that triangle all day. People, process, and technology. A technology means nothing for me. Nothing without humanity. It might as well be a rake or a hoe or a shovel. And a rake and a hoe and a shovel have done more to advance humans, right, than ChatGPT or AI. And if you're not making that level of investment in use, um, human use, human value, societal value, heck, food, right? Rake, hoe, and shovel, right? Um, and then that tool is useless. And as a matter of fact, if I take the hoe and hit you across the head with it, right, I've done damage with it. If I leave a hoe standing in the wall, or leave the rake standing in the garage, or outside in the barn, it doesn't injure. But we can create systems now that can do that. So what is our responsibility to that? Rake, hoe, shovel conversation is physical. But there is certainly an emotional, an intelligence, and a societal responsibility in our tool sets that have to be there. But, and maybe I'm just a bit too, what's the word I'm looking for? Pollyanna about that. I don't ever begrudge, you know, I still grow up in a capitalist society, right? I don't begrudge uh, for-profit enterprise, right? What I what I begrudge is for-profit enterprise at the expense of the people in culture it should serve, right? That's all. When that void is there.
Mhm. I'm gonna agree with that. I always believe that no matter what, the human aspect still has to be part of it no matter what, right? Right now, we are so young in the stage of AI that right now it processes what you give it, like you were talking about earlier, and then it tries to make a decision based off what you gave it. It just doesn't come up with its own answer on its own yet. We're not at that. So I think the human aspect always has to be a part of it because we built it. We put it together. It didn't manifest itself. So we have to make sure that, I always get into AI governance and everything like that, that it has
Absolutely.
to be around
There
and
has
it
to be
has to.
governance models,
Yeah.
right? But a tool needs governance models. So let's think about that hierarchy of needs. And again, this is something I used to draw, right? You've got this tools, this structures, core capacity. Then you give it some data. Data can become intelligence. Intelligence can become knowledge. I don't even think AI's reached that, but let's just say it can become knowledge. And if you're really good, knowledge can become wisdom. Yeah, we're still back down the bottom of this triangle, right? I'm not sure about some of your capacity and the data that you have before we can get to whether or not you're knowledgeable about anything, right? And, what does it take to get to those other levels? The systems as they are defined today and that capacity, it doesn't ask that, doesn't seek to be wise. I'm not even sure if it seeks knowledge.
Right.
Definitely seeking data.
It
Yeah.
seeks some
That,
data.
that's what it wants. Yeah.
It wants some data
Yeah.
and it wants some water. As we all do, data and water.
Understood. So now I'm curious. Now, Joy, you've been the CEO and founder of the Cook's Nook for quite a while. If you could just give us a background of the Cook's Nook and the
Sure.
importance of it.
Sure. So the Cook's Nook, um, well, let's start at the beginning. So I was Adele, and I tell this story occasionally, right? You're a global product strategist, often the only, and had been for years. I think I was probably in my seventh or eighth year at that point at Dell, and somewhere in the 17th or 18th year of a technology career. And, you know, I am still, the only black face, brown face in a room until my friend of mine here in Amir showed up in rooms, but for the longest time, that was it. I could be in a room of 40, right? Um, and, it was the usual conversation about our widgets, as we call them. I call them widgets. We're selling computers, right? And, you know, the conversations in the rooms always went the same, right? Who should be doing what, under what conditions, yada, yada, yada. Then people start to get agitated. And I had a saying, look, we are not putting shoes on children. We are not curing cancer, right? And we are not feeding our unhoused. These are widgets, right? And that was an attempt to get people to take a step back, put things in perspective, and let's, try to get done what we're trying to get done. Well, after the fourth, fifth, 10th time of saying that, I literally was making gestures. We are not putting shoes on children. We're not curing cancer. And I got to the last bit. We are not feeding. And I had a pause. And it's that blip in the brain, that moment where that instantaneous quick processing happens. And you go, I've said that, but now I'm hearing it. And it's hitting me differently. We are not feeding our unhoused. And I went, Why not? Why am I not doing that? Why am I doing this again and again, right? Looking at a program that should be a $10 million program to have revenues of desired revenues of $1 billion incremental, right? Um, but I know my budget's going to be 1 million. Why am I doing this again worldwide and to be successful at it, right? And that blip happened. And, after some one-on-ones I had been having for several years with executives, I was like, that's when it hit me. Should I be doing something somewhere else in a different way? Why is there a void in my technology, in my work? This emotional, social, cultural, human void in my work that I have to remind people of humanity in a building, in a meeting. And that led me to something I was interested in was just culinary school. And so what I did is sort of trying to explore that and how that environment worked, right? I don't step into an environment until I have a little bit of intel, right? Or to create a product, right? What is that product potentially? I went to culinary school. So I would run this global, huge, massive thing, product programs from 8 a.m. to 4 o'clock. And then I would jump in the car and head back down from Round Rock into Austin and um, went to culinary school at night from 5 p.m. to midnight. Your nose. And I did that for 8 or 9 months. And out of that, I wrote up, once a product person, always a product person. Everything's a product, right? It just doesn't go away. You can't even help yourself half the time. But write up a product. And the product ended up becoming the Cook's Nook. It was to create an incubator, which did not exist here, an incubator to develop, to give a space and a voice to those who were developing food. It was really to pull food products out of communities where for entrepreneurs, it often gets stuck. How do I get to the shelves? How do I get to retail? How do I create those incubators just like we have in technology, except it's in food, it's in nutrition, it's in culinary. And it was a culinary incubator, and it was the first of its kind here in the area. And the Cook's Nook, and built a building facility because I needed to, as part of the product, I think I needed to, especially for the spreadsheet of the product, I had to build and own the building myself. And I did that. Took me 2 years to get that built. Entrepreneurs came. We provided them business services, talking about spreadsheets, P&Ls, products, product fit. Are you hitting your market? Who's your audience? Who's that target? New concepts. I put a lean canvas in front of them, 1-page lean canvas. Okay, we're going to do this very quickly and talk about this. Where do you have answers or you don't have answers? Many people realize they love doing the food, but they didn't understand that they were owning a food company. And those are two different things. They love being in the kitchen to make something, but if you really want to be on a shelf, that's something else, right? You want a retail product that works, is affordable, hits your numbers, hits your audience, hits all the targets that we talk about. What does that take? So we did that for 4 years. And that was really important and critical and became very much a part of what we call food and tech and seeing invisible in food and tech. And a lot of our entrepreneurs who came through are still in business on many made shelves. They're at HEB, they're at grocers. They, got into the Unify or KE sort of portfolios. These are your big food distribution mechanisms. End up in Wegmans or stores across the US, which is great. And that, the CPG, consumer packaged goods, is a huge part of Austin. And then at the beginning of 2020, very quickly, we saw the first thing that we didn't know, but eventually we called it COVID. I was sick in 2020. We were running the Cook's Nook, had been running for about 4 years at that point, I believe, 4 years or so, and 5 years, and I got sick. I was watching what was happening with food and what food was available to people. I myself, was a former diabetic, and as I was watching television, I was lying there sick. I couldn't even leave my own room. I was so sick. Um, Once a product person, always a product person. I saw what was being passed out by food banks and others, and I went, "If I had to eat that, I would be sick." It was not relevant to my culture. It was boxes of food, boxes of, I just call it calories. It was enriched products and items. And I get that folks, they were trying to get, something out the door very quickly to folks. But actually, that is the standard, right? In emergency programming or even ongoing programming for that matter. And I said, there's a problem with that if you are out of an underserved community, how do you access that? If you are someone who has a medical condition, how do you access that? And then if you have religious or other kinds of cultural challenges around what's being provided, how do you do that? And so uh, Cook's Nook 2.0 came into existence. We changed the entire model and we became a nutrition solutions company focused on providing culturally relevant nutrition and nutrition solutions for healthcare, for cities, counties, and governments, and for those developing what we call food as medicine studies, right? How do we provide culturally relevant and quality nutrition to targeted communities and vulnerable communities with health conditions? And that became our focus and really successful. I laid there sick and wrote up the first uh, program and said, you have to have something next to that. You can't just have this box product. You have to give something else for those who need it quickly, don't have cooking facilities, needs to align with uh, health condition and problem in the emergency version of what we called cultura cuisine, and that became the main product line. And the I wrote it up, and about 2 weeks later, the city council and the county said, "We're absolutely gonna do it." And 2 weeks after that, I was in production with a new product. That happened in a month, and I was still lying in bed. I actually didn't get him. That was April, early April. It got approved by city council. We went into production April 27th. I will never forget it. I personally did not walk back into the Cook's Nook feeling better until probably the first week of May. But got that together, and that's what the Cook's Nook has done for the last 5 years. It's build not just emergency nutrition solutions and programs, but ongoing programs into targeted communities, maternal health, renal health, diabetes health, um, those who are doing post-discharge mental health, and they need nutrition to those individuals in that time frame. Um, so yeah, and that's been our partners in Food is Medicine and the policy around that, and then I became, currently the chair of the Austin Travis County Food Policy Board as a result, because at the end of the day, I'm always a policy wonk.
Well, that's incredible. So you've done a lot of firsts, Joy. So what advice would you give to people who are looking to pivot from corporate to entrepreneurship? Because I mean, you've pivoted successfully, and not just once, but twice, even within Cook's Nook.
Yeah. Um, I think the biggest advice I would give to anybody is you can't change path unless you know what your path has been. You don't have to know where you're going, but you certainly have to know who you are and where you are, because you have to trust yourself. You have to trust the inputs into yourself. You have to trust the things that inspire you and taught you. You have to trust this person first, this intelligence first. If you can, then you will trust that you are making good choices and decisions. and that sometimes a good choice and decision is to change paths, that that's a legitimate answer and response to this technology and this system, right? And if you truly know that, I think where you're going will ultimately present itself to you, if that makes sense. Um, and it won't be loud, it'll be very quiet. It's that moment of, "Oh, it was right there," right? I just had to believe it and trust myself in it. Um, and that is probably the first thing I always tell people. Um, you can't have, and I think many people practice it, self-delusion. We tell ourselves fictions, we create fictions, we write stories, we write narratives. And I keep hearing Chat GPT as I talk. It's very strange. Again, how I trust this model. I trust that this model has the right heuristics to be able to make appropriate decisions. And sometimes input in those decisions are emotional, social, and other vectors, and that's legitimate too. And I trust the outputs. Um, if you can get that far with yourself, then the next step will always, always, always present itself. It will always present itself. And if I can get entrepreneurs to be honest, sometimes that honesty leads them in all kinds of directions. Um, I think that's the first thing, is to be honest.
Sage advice. I'm reminded of a popular phrase that we see on social media regularly, and the phrase is, "You are enough." And I think what you've described is effectively that trust that we need to have in ourselves. But just changing topics a little bit, Joy, you've done some incredible things already between corporate and the Cook's Nook. What prompted you to get into politics? I mean, that is a huge leap.
To be honest, right? I that actually happened the first year of the Cook's Nook. We built the Cook's Nook. Well, after we did the building, our first year being open, I was actually on the campaign trail. And and I think it was the same thing that compels me, I think, still to be in front of people, even as an introvert, right? It is, I have a sense or overdeveloped sense of responsibility and to give visibility to myself or a story of uh, an African American or a Black story in this country. Um, and I was asked if I could do that in the political realm. It's, can you run for this office? What does it mean for you to lead potentially an office that is, the comptroller's office here in the state of Texas runs, it's a team of about 2,300 to 2,800, depending. Um, but it is responsible for the operational aspect of the state, right? It pays everybody. First job, it pays everybody, including your judges, actually. It is responsible for your taxes. It is responsible for developing future forward programs in a lead in architecture, and it is responsible for your state park system, actually. It used to be, that state park system was actually part of the comptrollers, and it's all about execution, right? The comptroller's office, in short, is all about execution, right? Getting stuff out the door, getting dollars, programs, projects out the door, and having them be successful. And that really, really spoke to me. Um, it is the executioner of a budget, right? It even actually would tell the Senate, our House and Senate, how much things cost, right? How much is this product gonna cost you to get it out the door, right? Can you be successful at it? Um, that's part of its review process in any bill, potential bill or that's gonna go up. It writes a set of parameters. Can it be done? Can we do this thing? And that really, really, really spoke to me, when I got asked about that role. Being part of global teams, you sort of understand that. But, I think it was this idea, what does it mean for a woman and a Black woman to run for this office? That was just the icing on the cake, right? Um, you know, what would it have meant for my company if I had actually won that campaign that year? That's a whole nother conversation. Um, you know, but, choosing to run for comptroller is one of the biggest and best things I think I've ever done. Um, I come back to that triangle of people, process, and technology around what is this product and what are we doing and why are we here? How do I build a campaign team? How do I do that? How do I do both things efficiently and effectively? I still need the Cook's Nook to get off the ground and be successful. Heck, I just built a building, right? But I also need this campaign to be successful and move around this state and go places and talk to folks who haven't been spoken to. Uh, How do I target into places and neighborhoods I really want to be seen in, including going to my own old neighborhood in Northeast Houston and making sure that, that community and having an event there to be seen and talk to people. Um, I think running for office is part of my continually retelling the same story over and over again. I'm just doing it in different arenas, effectively. And that was a huge year of my life. I loved it. I loved meeting people on campaign. I love talking to Texans. I love Texas. Love Texas. And from our coast to the mountains to the desert to, you know, oh gosh, I tell people I spent my 20th anniversary on the border in Mission in a RV park because I wanted to go to Mission, Texas, and what does that mean to be in the valley, and go to places along the Rio Grande, um, and, yeah, and so, I would never take any of that year back. I think it's seminal, and it's been seminal to me to continue to tell the same story in relationships about honesty leading to quality and quality product, and how are you inspired and doing the right thing in corporate. The honest thing, the authentic things, and those things are aligned. The right thing is often the honest thing. It's often the thing that's most authentic about your voice in that. I have to tell the truth about this product, this audience, this target. What are we doing it? Why are we doing it? And who are we doing it for? So that's
Wow.
how I ended up running for office. And get to stay in politics right now as the chair of Annie's List and getting other progressive women into office. How do you wanna get there, and why do you wanna run for office? Right.
That might be a offline conversation I gotta have with you, Joy, about politics. Just
Absolutely.
gonna put that out there. We don't have to have it on the podcast, but it might be an offline conversation. But, I know we're getting close to time and,
Right.
I ask everyone, what is your theme music? What is that music that gets you ready for the day? Joy, what's your theme music?
You know it, you love it. It is Level Up. It's Sierra. Level up, level up, level up, Um, every day, every moment is an opportunity to level up, whatever that looks like to you, um, and not to be afraid of it. Um Yeah, I love that song a lot. It's energetic, but I think for her and in hearing it, it is a very authentic song, right? Those old mistakes are gone. I won't do those. I won't do those no more, right? Um, that's old news. Um, you'll see CC coming. That's her nickname for herself, Sierra CC, right? Um, and how to keep moving forward, how to have the courage and self to continuously reinvent and to continue to level up no matter what's happening.
Well, you hit a good point about leveling up, and I think Amir would agree with me. And as you know, me and Amir are both black belts. He's a black belt in Taekwondo. I'm a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu. Oh, okay, okay, all right.
That's Tai Chi.
Tai Chi. Okay. Well, we do something special on the podcast as well. For certain people and everyone that we have on here does great work, but some people are black belts in their industry. Or we feel like you are a black belt in your industry. Like you say, you keep leveling up. Even though you're a black belt in another martial arts, we would love to give you a black belt on the podcast because you are a black belt in your industry.
Oh my gosh. Oh no, you guys are really kind. It's it. Oh man, I'm of course that's a setup here. I brought that out, but uh, but there is something fundamental. I think that made Tai Chi or martial art just sort of very resonant, right? It is every day, or went to class. I mean, I could go to class five times a week, right? More than that, right? It just depends on how the school is set up. And every time you walk in, you may be doing the same thing, but it looks better. It feels different week after week after week. Some weeks it was like, "Ooh, no, that snake creeps down was not good this week," right? Um, but um, every week it felt better. Right? And all I did in the first year was just do the 108 form, the 108 Tai Chi form. That was it, right? And then I think the second year we started to do, we did staff, we could do forms. We could do staff form and we did fan form. Um, and then I did saber, but you didn't get to saber till like third out of the, out of the, out of the, weapon forms. Um, And then by that time, you've progressed through various sashes, right? And so it wasn't probably till my third year that I started to feel comfortable enough that, okay, I might test this year, right? But it's amazing how it felt better and better every single time you did it. Is it that leveling up? Is it that really being super authentic about what I can accomplish today? And then finding out, staying in that moment about what I can do today led to a difference 3 weeks later that I didn't expect. It looked different 3 weeks later. People would say objectively, it looks different, right? The form, my first section of the 108 form looks different. And that's because I'm just staying here. I'm staying, and that's me pointing internally, right? I'm staying internal and authentic about what's happening with me in this saber form or me in this staff form. And how am I turning and trying to listen and being in here?
Mm.
And I think that's the same. I think ultimately the results of being so honest and authentic in self, it will manifest itself in product, in tools, in outcome, whatever that may be.
I'll add to that. It's also consistency.
Mhm.
Consistency. Not everybody can do consistency, especially when stuff is hard.
When it
I
gets hard, oh,
when it gets hard, that consistency, everybody wants to do something when it's easy. It's easy,
mhm.
but when it gets tough and hard and that mind starts telling you it's okay for you to quit, it's okay, you've done enough. It's consistency. Like you said, you've done the form and you just keep doing it and it gets better. Gets a little better each and everything. Same thing with jujitsu, same thing with
Mhm.
taekwondo. If it's a kick, the kick gets better every
It
time you
gets better. It's like,
practice.
"I can't do that
Yeah,
kick. I can't do
yeah,
a tiger
yeah.
kick. Okay, here's my tiny tiger kick,
Mhm.
my little ti," and then your little tiny tiger gets better and
Mhm.
better, right?
Mhm. It's just
Yeah.
it's consistency over time. It's something that I think everybody should take from anything. Be
Mhm.
consistent. Even when it gets difficult, the road is not gonna be easy. The road is gonna have some bumps. Sometimes you're gonna take a couple of lefts, then a right, then a circle, then back to a straight. So
Oh,
be
and then the
consistent.
wind is gonna hit you, and
Yes.
then the floods
It's
come.
gonna rain.
Yeah.
It's gonna be everything. So just be
Yeah,
consistent.
yeah. But here's the thing, you can be consistent when you understand that that's what's required, and be okay in that, and be okay in it, you know? So, but yeah, we got all kinds of metaphors here for
I
being on the
know. I
I know,
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I have to say, Joy, it has been a pleasure talking to you today and having you on the podcast. It has
oh,
definitely
thank
been a
you.
pleasure. I've learned a lot. I know Amir knows you, but I'm sure he learned some more stuff today. And we have to say thank you for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you guys for having me. I think this podcast is fabulous to connect, boardrooms and sashes. I think and goals. I think it's just fabulous. I think it's so fun.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you, and I will say to our Black Belts and Boardrooms audience, we will see you on the next one.